The baobab tree stood in the heart of the village, like an ancient sentinel, its twisted roots sprawling into the earth, and its branches stretching high toward the heavens. Elders said its bark bore the stories of the ancestors, whispered on the wind that rustled its leaves. Children played beneath its shade, their laughter mingling with the songs of women pounding grain nearby. Yet, as the sun dipped low on the horizon, its shadow stretched long and foreboding, casting a hush over the bustling village. The tree was a gathering place, a spiritual pillar. The villagers believed its roots held the spirits of their ancestors, a bridge between the living and the dead. Yet, not all was reverence. Whispers of strange disappearances and bad fortune clung to its bark like moss. The baobab sees everything, the griots would say, but it speaks only in riddles. Adisa knelt on the dusty ground, sharpening a stick with a small knife. His young face, bright with curiosity, often carried a crease of frustration these days. "Why do we follow things we don't understand?" he muttered to himself, breaking into his thoughts. From across the way, a cluster of boys dared each other to climb the baobab. Adisa turned his head sharply. "You won't go far," he called out, loud enough to carry, but soft enough not to offend. "The ancestors will snatch you from the branches." The boys laughed nervously, unsure whether he was mocking them or issuing a genuine warning. Adisa returned to his work, shaking his head. His questions, often sharp and unyielding, had earned him a reputation. Adisa the doubter, the griots teased him, though never unkindly. But even his mother, Mama Abeni, often sighed when he pressed her for answers about the elders' cryptic sayings. Mama Abeni sat inside their small hut, grinding herbs into a smooth paste. She worked methodically, her hands practiced and steady, but her thoughts betrayed her calm exterior. She glanced at Adisa through the open doorway, watching his restless movements. "You'll wear a hole into the ground with your pacing, Adisa," she called out. Adisa looked up. "Maybe the ground has answers, Mama," he retorted, his tone light but edged with meaning. Mama Abeni froze for a moment, her hand stilling over the pestle. Her gaze lingered on her son, a boy too clever for his own good, and her chest tightened. She carried the weight of a secret, one that seemed to grow heavier every time Adisa questioned the world around him. "The ground doesn't speak," she said finally, her voice soft and firm. "Neither does the baobab. Stop chasing voices where there are none." Chief Olowu strode through the village with the slow, deliberate steps of a man who knew he commanded both respect and fear. His tall frame and grey-streaked beard gave him a presence that silenced even the rowdiest of gatherings. The elders often huddled around him like birds around a hawk, hanging on his words as though they were drops of rain in a drought. As he passed the baobab, his gaze lingered on its gnarled roots. His jaw tightened, and his eyes clouded with something that looked like unease, though no one dared say so aloud. The villagers respected Chief Olowu, but some, especially the young, whispered that his past held shadows as deep as the baobab's roots. The sound of laughter spilled from the market as Okoye, the trader, entertained a small crowd with his tales. His voice carried the easy rhythm of someone unburdened by tradition, and his gestures were bold, drawing attention like moths to a flame. "You know what this village needs," he said, leaning closer to his listeners, his tone conspiratorial. "A school, right here, where that old tree stands." Gasps rippled through the crowd. "You would cut down the baobab?" a woman asked, her voice hushed with horror. "Why not?" Okoye shrugged. "Do you know how many children could learn under its branches if we cleared this space? The ancestors would thank us for using the land wisely." His words reached Chief Olowu's ears, before the crowd could disperse. The elder's voice, sharp and commanding, silenced the chatter. The baobab stands for a reason, Okoye. Its roots bind us to our past. Cut it down, and you sever the thread that holds this village together. Okoye met Chief Olawu's glare with a grin. Perhaps it's time to weave a new thread, Chief. Late one evening, as the stars pierced the sky like shards of glass, Adisa lay awake on his mat. The stillness of the night was broken only by the low hum of cicadas. He had meant to sleep, but voices drifted through the air like whispers, carried by the wind. He crept toward the sound, his bare feet silent on the cool earth. Near the baobab, he spotted two figures, Chief Olowu and Mama Abeni, their faces half lit by the flickering light of a small lantern. "You should have destroyed it long ago." Mama Abeni's voice trembled. "It's not that simple," Chief Olowu replied. His tone clipped. "You don't know what's buried there. Some things are better left untouched." Adisa froze, his heart hammering in his chest. His breath came shallow, and he strained to hear more, but the voices fell silent. The sound of retreating footsteps pulled him from his trance. What could be buried under the tree that even Chief Olowu feared? The question gnawed at Adisa like a termite burrowing through wood. The next day, Adisa lingered near the baobab, staring at its twisted roots with a newfound intensity. The tree's shadow seemed longer, darker, as if it were hiding something in its embrace. He knelt and placed a hand on the rough bark. "What are you hiding?" he whispered. "What are you waiting for me to find?" From a distance, Mama Abeni watched her son, her expression a mixture of love and dread. She knew the seed of doubt had been planted in Adisa's mind, and she feared what might grow from it. The stage was set. The tension coiled like a snake ready to strike. The baobab, once a symbol of unity, now stood at the center of a storm that promised to unravel secrets buried deep within its roots. The sun dipped low over the village, bathing the baobab tree in hues of fiery orange. Adisa approached the griot, a wrinkled old man seated on a low stool near the fire, his carved drum resting beside him. The griot's voice, soft and laden with wisdom, seemed to carry the weight of countless tales. "You've come to ask about the tree," the griot said before Adisa could speak. His milky eyes looked past the boy, as though he could see things far beyond the present. Adisa knelt before him, his curiosity lighting his face. "I hear whispers, Baba. They say the tree holds the spirits of our ancestors, but I think it hides something darker. Tell me the truth." The griot chuckled, a dry, hollow sound. "Truth is not given, child. It is earned. But listen, and you may find pieces of what you seek." He began to beat the drum lightly, its rhythm steady and haunting. Long ago, this baobab became more than a tree. It became a guardian of secrets, a sanctuary for those wronged by betrayal and greed. It holds their anger, their pain, their hunger for justice. The whispers you hear are their voices, calling for what was taken from them. Adisa leaned closer, his pulse quickening. But why do the elders fear it? Why do they hide from its truths? The griot's gaze turned stern. "Some secrets, boy, are best left buried. The tree sees all, remembers all, and waits for the day its roots can no longer hold what lies beneath. Be careful where your curiosity leads you." In the days that followed, strange events began to stir unease in the village. At night, the wind seemed to carry faint whispers, their words unintelligible, but heavy with sorrow. Shadows danced around the baobab tree, even when no one stood near. Children playing beneath its branches would suddenly stop, their eyes wide with fear, and flee without explanation. Villagers spoke in hushed tones. "The ancestors are restless," one elder murmured. "We must honor them, before they bring misfortune. Others avoided the tree entirely, crossing the village square quickly, as if its shadow might reach out and snatch them. One evening, as Adisa sat sharpening a stick, Mama Abeni stormed into the hut, her face a mask of worry. She placed her hands on her hips, towering over him. "Adisa, you've been asking about the tree," she said, her voice sharp but trembling. "I warned you to leave it alone." Adisa looked up defiantly. "Why should I? Everyone fears it, but no one explains why. What are you hiding, Mama?" Her composure faltered. She sat beside him, lowering her voice. "The baobab is not just a tree, it is a witness, a judge, and a keeper of things best forgotten. Its roots bind the spirits of those who were wronged, and its branches shelter the weight of many sins. The tree sees all but reveals nothing for free." Adisa frowned, frustration bubbling inside him. If it sees all, then maybe it knows what happened to Baba. Mama Abeni's eyes widened, and she grabbed his arm tightly. "Do not speak of such things," she hissed. "Your questions will only bring you pain. Leave the tree alone, Adisa." But her warning only fanned the flames of his determination. The village square buzzed with debate. Okoye stood before a gathering of villagers, his voice filled with passion. "This tree is a relic of the past. If we cut it down, we can use this space for a school, a place for our children to learn and grow. Let us not be bound by old fears." His words were met with murmurs of agreement from the younger villagers. Chief Olowu stepped forward, his presence commanding silence. "You speak of progress, Okoye, but you do not understand what you seek to destroy. The baobab's roots are tied to our ancestors. To cut it down would be to sever our connection to them. Do you wish to anger the spirits?" Okoye smirked. "Perhaps. It's time we stop fearing shadows and start living for ourselves." The division was clear. Younger villagers sided with Okoye, eager for change. The elders stood firmly with Chief Olowu, defending tradition. The once harmonious village grew tense, whispers of conflict rippling through its quiet streets. Adisa's mind churned as he pieced together fragments of stories overheard in passing. He remembered the hushed voices of the griot, his mothers, cryptic warnings, and the elders' fear. Each thread seemed to lead back to the baobab tree and to his father's mysterious death. He sat under the tree one night, staring at its sprawling roots. "What are you hiding?" he whispered. "And why does no one want me to know?" The moon hung high in the sky, casting a pale light over the village. Adisa moved silently, his bare feet making no sound on the cool earth. He carried a small spade, his heart pounding with a mixture of fear and determination. He knelt at the base of the tree and began to dig. The soil was dense and unyielding, as if it were fighting to protect its secrets. Sweat dripped from his brow, and his hands trembled, but he kept going. After what felt like hours, the spade struck something solid. Adisa's breath hitched. He dug with his hands, pulling away the dirt, until a bundle wrapped in animal skin emerged. It was stained with dark, crusted marks that sent a chill down his spine. With trembling hands, he unwrapped it. Inside was a necklace, old and tarnished, but unmistakably familiar. His father's necklace. Adisa stared at it, his heart racing. Before he could process the implications, a voice boomed behind him. "What do you think you are doing?" Adisa spun around, the necklace clutched tightly in his hand. Chief Olowu stood there, his face a mask of rage. Chief Olowu dragged Adisa to the village square, his grip unyielding. The boy struggled, but refused to let go of the necklace. Villagers gathered, their faces illuminated by lantern light. Murmurs of confusion, and concern spreading through the crowd. "This boy has desecrated the sacred tree," Chief Olowu bellowed. "He must answer for his actions." Adisa, his voice, a shaking but firm, held up the necklace for all to see. "This was my father's," he declared. "It was buried beneath the tree. What else have you hidden there?" Gasps rippled through the crowd. Elders exchanged uneasy glances, and the tension in the air became palpable. "You dare accuse the elders?" Chief Olowu roared. "I dare to seek the truth," Adisa shot back. "The tree doesn't just hide spirits, it hides lies. And it's time we uncover them." The villagers looked to one another, their faith in their leaders beginning to crack. The baobab tree, once a symbol of unity, now stood as a monument to secrets waiting to be unearthed. The village square buzzed with uneasy murmurs as the crowd gathered beneath the pale light of a rising moon. Chief Olowu stood tall at the center, his staff planted firmly in the ground, like a stake marking authority. His voice boomed across the square, silencing whispers as quickly as they rose. "This boy," he declared, pointing a rigid finger at Adisa, who stood before him with dirt-streaked clothes and defiance in his eyes, "has desecrated the sacred baobab tree. He has disturbed the spirits that protect this village." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Mothers pulled their children closer, while the elders exchanged worried glances. Adisa's voice cut through the silence like the sharp edge of a blade. "Desecrated?" he shouted. "No, Chief. I uncovered the lies buried under that tree. Lies you've kept hidden for years." A hushed wave of disbelief swept over the villagers. Chief Olowu's eyes narrowed, his voice growing colder. "You speak as though you understand what you've done, boy. The baobab has stood as our protector for generations. It is you who has brought shame to this village." Adisa stepped forward, holding up a bundle wrapped in animal skin. "Then explain this," he cried, his voice shaking with both fury and fear. He unwrapped the bundle, revealing a blood-stained necklace. "This was my father's. It was buried beneath the tree. Why, Chief? What are you hiding?" The villagers gasped again, the weight of recognition falling upon them like a heavy storm. Many stepped closer, their eyes fixed on the necklace, as whispers rose among them. It belonged to Adisa's father. How did it come to be buried there?" Chief Olowu's grip on his staff tightened. "Enough," he bellowed, but his voice faltered under the mounting pressure of the crowd's disbelief. Adisa's voice rose, trembling but unyielding. "You call the tree sacred, but it's a graveyard for secrets. My father's blood is on your hands, Chief, and it's time the village knows the truth." A wail pierced the tension, drawing every eye to Mama Abeni. She stepped forward, her face etched with grief, her hands trembling. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she spoke, her voice cracking under the weight of her confession. "It's true," she whispered, her words barely audible at first, then louder, with a desperation that silenced the crowd. "It's true, Chief. Olowu killed my husband, Adisa's father. It was over greed, over gold. They fought, and Olowu struck him down in anger." The crowd recoiled, stunned. "Olowu buried his body beneath the tree," Mama Abeni continued, her voice breaking. "He came to me after, swearing to protect me and my son if I kept silent. I thought I was saving my family, but I see now. I betrayed my own soul." Chief Olowu's face hardened, but a flicker of guilt flashed in his eyes. "You would condemn me for a mistake made in the heat of the moment," he snapped. "I acted to protect this village. Without my leadership, we would have fallen apart." "You protected no one," Mama Abeni cried. "You buried your sins beneath the tree and called it sacred." The villagers erupted into chaos. Voices rose in heated debate. Olowu did what he thought was best, shouted an elder. He kept the village strong. But at what cost? Demanded another. Betrayal, murder. We cannot allow this to stand. The younger villagers, emboldened by Adisa's courage, demanded action. If this tree holds the truth, then we must uncover it. Let the spirits judge who is guilty. The elders hesitated, their loyalty to Olowu clashing with their growing doubts. The voices grew louder, angrier, until the village seemed ready to tear itself apart. Stop! Adisa shouted, stepping into the center of the storm. We cannot argue over shadows. If you truly want answers, then dig. Let the tree reveal what lies beneath. The villagers gathered tools, their movements fueled by anger and determination. Men and women dug at the base of the baobab tree, their hands trembling as they unearthed layers of soil. Hours passed before the first discovery, bone yellowed with age, then another, and another. Gasps and cries filled the air as the villagers uncovered the remains of those long lost, their bones a stark testimony to the treachery hidden beneath the tree's roots. Chief Olowu's face turned pale as he watched, his mask of authority slipping away. The baobab, once a symbol of unity and protection, now stood as a monument to greed and betrayal. Families mourned openly as the truth settled over the village like a dark cloud. The wailing of women rose to the heavens, a mournful song for those who had been wronged and forgotten. Elders led chants to appease the restless spirits, their voices heavy with regret. The air grew thick with sorrow, and the baobab seemed to sag under the weight of its revealed sins. The villagers turned to Chief Olowu, their faces a mix of anger and heartbreak. What do you have to say for yourself? Demanded one elder, his voice trembling with emotion. Chief Olowu straightened, attempting to regain his composure. I did what I thought was necessary, he said, his tone firm but hollow. I protected this village. Everything I did was for its survival. You protected no one, Adisa said quietly, stepping forward. You only protected yourself. The crowd murmured in agreement. Olowu, an elder said solemnly. You have lost the right to lead this village. Leave, and do not return. Olowu's face darkened, but he knew there was no argument to be made. Slowly, he turned and walked away, his figure shrinking into the shadows. Mama Abeni stepped forward, her voice trembling. I too have failed you, she said. I stayed silent when I should have spoken. I let fear guide me instead of truth. I will spend the rest of my life seeking redemption. Adisa looked at his mother, his heart aching with a mixture of anger and compassion. The truth has been uncovered, he said. Now it's time to heal. The villagers nodded, their eyes filled with hope for a new beginning. Together, they stood beneath the baobab tree, united in their grief and their determination to rebuild. The air was heavy in the village square, the silence pressing down on the gathered crowd like a storm about to break. Chief Olowu stood before them, his once proud figure diminished by the weight of the accusations. The staff he held, a symbol of his authority for decades, now felt like a hollow branch in his trembling hands. An elder stepped forward, his voice filled with sorrow and determination. Olowu, for years, we trusted you to lead us, to protect us, but your greed has poisoned the roots of this village. You have betrayed the spirits of our ancestors and the people you swore to serve. Olowu's eyes flashed with desperation. I acted for the good of the village, he bellowed. Without me, you would have been overrun by chaos. You will not survive without my leadership, the villagers murmured, their faces a mix of anger and heartbreak. Adisa, standing near the center, stepped forward and spoke with quiet strength. The village does not need lies to survive. The tree grew tall, but its roots were rotten, just like your promises. We will heal, but not with you among us. Olowu's face twisted with rage and fear. He raised his staff, pointing it toward the villagers. You think you can survive without me? You will see. The spirits will curse you for your betrayal. His words were met with silence, the villagers unmoved by his threats. Leave, the elder said firmly. You are no longer welcome here. Stripped of his title and honor, Olowu dropped his staff to the ground and turned his back on the people he had ruled for so long. His footsteps echoed in the square as he walked away, his figure swallowed by the shadows of the night. The next morning, Mama Abini stood before the same gathering, her hands clasped tightly together. Her face was pale, and her voice trembled as she began to speak. My people, she said, her gaze sweeping across the crowd. I have failed you. For years I knew the truth, and I stayed silent. I let fear rule me. I thought I was protecting my son, but I see now that my silence only caused more pain. The villagers listened, their expressions softening as her words poured out. I cannot undo what has been done, she continued, but I can make amends. I will step down as the village healer. I will spend the rest of my life seeking forgiveness, not only from you, but from the spirits of those who were wronged. Her voice broke as tears streamed down her cheeks. I am sorry, she whispered. I am so sorry. Adisa stepped forward, placing a hand on his mother's shoulder. The truth has come to light, Mama. That is the first step toward healing. The villagers murmured among themselves, their anger tempered by her humility. Slowly, one by one, they nodded, accepting her apology. Her courage inspired them to begin their own journey of forgiveness. The crowd turned to Adisa, their faces filled with respect and hope. You have shown us the truth, Adisa, one elder said. You are brave beyond your years. The village needs someone like you to lead us. Adisa shook his head. I am not a leader, he said humbly. I am just a boy who wanted to know the truth. Leadership belongs to the people who can guide us with wisdom and unity. My role was to uncover what was hidden. But we must rebuild, another villager said. Where do we begin? Adisa looked toward the baobab tree, its gnarled branches now stripped of their sanctity. We start by planting a new tree, he said, a tree that represents honesty, unity, and a fresh beginning. Let it grow as a symbol of what we have learned and as a promise to protect one another. That evening, the villagers gathered around the old baobab tree. Torches flickered in the dim light, their flames casting shadows that danced like restless spirits. The elders, joined by the villagers, began the solemn task of cutting down the tree that had stood as both protector and deceiver for generations. As the massive trunk fell, the ground seemed to sigh, releasing the weight of the secrets it had held for so long. The villagers set the fallen tree alight, the flames consuming its twisted branches and rotted roots. Songs filled the air, mournful yet hopeful, as the villagers sang to the spirits of their ancestors. The griot, his voice steady and filled with emotion, led the chants. Forgive us, he called, his words carrying into the night. We release the burdens of the past. May the ashes of this tree carry our prayers to the heavens. The villagers scattered the ashes to the winds, watching as they drifted away like whispers of forgiveness. The next morning, the village gathered once more. A young sapling stood where the old tree had been, its tender leaves reaching toward the sky. Adisa, with Mama Abeni by his side, held a small jar of water. He knelt by the sapling and poured the water over its roots, his actions deliberate and symbolic. This tree, he said, is not just for us. It is for those who came before. and those who will come after. Let it grow strong, fed by honesty and unity. The villagers took turns pouring water over the sapling, their faces shining with hope. The griot stood before them, his voice rich, with wisdom as he spoke the final words of the ceremony. What was buried beneath the tree broke our spirits, he said, his tone reverent. But what we plant today will mend them. May this tree stand as a reminder that truth will always rise. No matter how deeply it is buried, the villagers cheered, their voices filled with joy and determination. The old era of fear and secrets had ended, and a new chapter of honesty and unity had begun.